right, greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and you don't know already. I pray everybody is doing well. Look, now, I recently came across this video on I Never Knew TV. Shout out to them for all of the great content they are putting out for the culture. And this one caught my eye in light of the Bob Marley conversation, in light of talking about soul families and how we attract like kind. And this is Judy Mowatt speaking. It's a clip of her talking about growing up without love in childhood. So I wanted to speak about that briefly and go to some of the comment section because I think this is very important, even as we are in the Marcus story. Why? Because he had a similar testimony. And this is also not to necessarily judge parents, but to let parents know how important it is to be a parent, to be a guardian of a soul coming into the earth, the tutor, the mentor, the guide. How very important the act of sexual intercourse is and ushering in a soul, or many souls in this case. So in the case of Judy Mowatt, she says that in her senior years, right, she is reflecting and understanding. And for those who don't know, she was iconic, I Trees, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Judy Mowatt. I mean, come on. You don't know Rita, Judy, Amasia. Right? I Trees. Okay, so she speaks about growing up in childhood and not feeling loved, not feeling embraced. The fact that her father wasn't there and her mother was a teenage mother and she was overwhelmed. This is her recounting her family history, right? That's why I say it's very important because she may have not been willing to look at the childhood, only carry the hurt, but don't know how to make sense of what she experienced. This is why I also value this conversation because because it may be hurtful, it is important so that you can move through that trauma, move through that pain, and get on the other side. So I really appreciated the way she succinctly explained from her understanding how and why she felt the way that she felt. So basically, she concluded that because of all of these extenuating circumstances, that her mother did not have the capacity to love her and her siblings because her mother herself did not have that love to give. You know, I partly believe and this theory that people have, and there's another part of me that says we can learn to love. We can learn to heal our inner parts of ourselves so that when the next generation comes along, we can do better. But I understand the time and the place that this situation is happening. And many parents, not all, but during a certain time frame, felt food, clothing, and shelter was all that you needed to give a child. Right? That love and embrace and affirmation and that positivity that radiates from the parents to the child, a lot of times that wasn't conveyed. And so that child emotionally is starved. Maybe you filled their physical bellies, but spiritually they grow up. And what she said was that later on in life, she would go looking for this love, this affirmation, this validity in men. But men at the time that she's are sexualizing her, fetishizing her, whatever they may be doing. And so that creates a deeper void because they're not loving you and seeing you for who you are, especially what she ultimately became. So definitely check out that video because it's important as we have these conversations. We're not just going over history just to be going over it. You understand what I'm saying? I can see why people become attracted to certain type of people because who else had that story? Rita felt as though, in certain spaces she didn't have that love, right? She had it from her father, but then her father left. She was rejected by her mother, and auntie gave her this kind of firm love, right? It's not the soft kind that she consistently looked for. Bob had a similar story. In the Rita, Bob, Judy Mowatt, I have to double check on Marcia and Peter Tosh. All of them have something similar. They grew up without fathers. So when we say that they are attracted to one another in a certain way, and Bunny Wailer grows up with a father, but according to Sadella, his father was abusive. So you find that these trauma bonds, when I said it before in the video, you find that people come together and they're glued together because their pain is similar and they can identify with the pain of one another. And speaking of which, there are people who came in the comment section able to identify with Judy. And I wanted to just share that a little bit because these conversations are helpful to healing the narrative. One person says, so many of us have this story. What story? Growing up without love, growing up not feeling loved in the way that a child needs to know that you're there. The mother is supposed to nourish. The mother is supposed to feed the soul to a certain degree. The father is supposed to provide protection, have the child and the family feel safe. So when one person, I know people are gonna be like, Amuna, your role is so, to a certain degree, roles need to be. Have you ever gone to a play and people didn't have roles? Like, you're like, whose lines are you reading? Come on now. You know what I mean? That would be confusion. So the mother, if she steps out of her space and she's not supported, she's not provided for, she's not secure, how then can she authentically show up for the child, right? So someone says, so many of us have this story. Somebody named Rada says, no love from both parents, even when they're physically present. I think this is important to note because people think just because the parent is not there that this can happen. And that's the absentee parent. But they can be there. In the case of Marcus Garvey, we see that his father was there, but emotionally and mentally, he was not there. And it can cause as much, if not more damage when they're there and you're ignored, when they're there and your needs are not met, because it creates another dynamic within the brain. So this is me now, not only just reading the stories, but taking a moment to look at the soul perspective of the stories that we are reading. It says, now I'm in a time when men and women bicker on here about each other and who isn't accountable and who this and who that, and never look at the traumas our people have endured and how to this day it is shaping us. I have to appreciate this comment because, as I've said in times past, the stories that are told and untold continue to govern us, whether we like it or not, until we meet these stories head on and begin to unpack them and process them and give them allowance to move through. Some people would be like, oh, I don't want to feel the pain. You know what I'm saying? And they don't, just ignore it. Or we self-medicate, whatever that may look like. But these stories, this energy, this information, when you process it and allow it to move through, not stay and move into you and never leave. No, I mean, transient. They're Airbnb. They're coming in, you're processing them, and then they're going on their merry little way, right? And this is the lens by which, when we look at our history, personal, collective, cultural, like I said, there's grace, because we didn't know what we didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know. And the times coming out of the disconnect, coming out of post, slavery, coming out of this particular injury period, this trauma, post-traumatic slave, as Dr. Joy DeGruy likes to say, on all fronts needs to be considered economically, as it relates to socially, as it relates to the family, right? The person, Rhoda goes on to say, we have carried on this from our ancestors, generation to generation, and now we are teaching each other to blame one another, to place one another above the other. And this is that man-woman fight foolishness when me see I go on the internet. And me I said to myself, you now move forward without the other. Male and female created he, them, Male and female created he, them. Some people like them to read the Bible. Male and female created he, them. You can't get away from it. Look into society. Look into culture. Look into nature. Male and female created he, them. You need these two energies. First of all, they balance one another, like night and day, like hot and cold, right? These two energies are the energies that create in this natural world. So fighting against one another is not the thing. I know the natural inclination would be to blame the other person. If you did not provide the food, it's the time when Bob did want Rita to cook, but they never had no stove. And then Vex said the food late. You understand? According to the narrative. You see what I'm saying? If you missed that episode, check it out. But without each person operating optimally and functioning in their principle, you're going to have this confusion, right? Let's continue to read a little bit. We need to be talking about counseling and dealing with root cause issues. Surprise, surprise. Here we are having a conversation and how to truly heal and be able to move forward. Make sure the generation of trauma ends with us in this time. And you cannot get away from the conversation. You cannot get away from looking at how it looks, good, bad, or indifferent. What I realize is that when you experience trauma, culturally, right, mentally, emotionally, and the person you love, family, then you feel torn between being honest about your experience and giving back the responsibility of the to the person who caused the injury. And it is in this space that a lot of people fall in the gap, in the ravine. Them don't get over the bridge. Because every time you have to look at the hurt, the pain, the trauma, you also have to look at the relationship to the person who did it. And if it feels as though you're betraying them, betraying yourself, not honoring your mother and your father, going against internal principles, it makes us feel this dissonance. So then we turn our eyes from the truth and kind of like, you know what, chum, I'm not bother with this, but just I got cover it back over because this is too much. I bid you, I understand it's difficult. As someone who has done this process and has committed the last 2 decades to doing this, we know look like 2 decades in the process. They say, well, Muna, when you start, when you're 2? No, but for real. Committing to this process is not for the weak, but it can be done. And one of the key things, if you don't take away anything else from this video, it requires honesty. The second thing it requires, I would, if I would tier them, right? Humility. Another thing it requires is grace. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's going to be some harsh realities. And as Judy Mowatt said in her video, she had to come to realize, how could somebody give you what them don't have? Now, I say that even though you don't have it, you can learn the skills and then do better. That's why we can break it. But in the beginning, if the person who you're asking for has no clue how to get it, they're going to be frustrated at you. She said her and her siblings would go towards her mother to be embraced for love, and they would be pushed off. That creates a whole nother dynamic in the mind of a child, because you need to know that you're warranted, you're valid, and that you are loved. So, I'm sad to hear that, but I'm also pleased to hear that she processed to a certain degree her life experience. You understand? Let me read just 1 or 2 more. Solid Rock says the history and even present story of our own communities are highly acidic. It is caustic to a certain degree. And when we see certain things happening in the community, even health-wise, it's because of the way in which we process, because our thoughts, our emotions become our internal state. They can cause sickness, mental, emotional, physical, right? So the way that the person puts it, acidic, it becomes caustic, right? A lot of chaos and trauma. And some would say it wasn't our fault. We kind of just woke up on the other side of this. And it is true. There is a level of truth to the reality of this was the seasoning, the breaking, the tearing asunder of the soul of the people and many peoples. Because I also maintain that Black people were not a monolith in this experience. You had many cultures, many people coming from different places within the continent who had different customs and understanding. Therefore, they weren't a monolith of Black people who came across. You understand what I'm saying? So in saying so, I mean to say that it's so many layers to this. And part of the process we're already doing with our reading and studying and understanding, right? So our people need healing. I've been chanting this mantra I pray for everyone going through these types of struggles. I appreciate that comment, because a lot of people say we need healing, but how do we begin? If you check this channel out, I have dedicated even the last 10 years on YouTube. Sometimes I felt like I was talking to myself, but I still left it on record because I realize this, but I also realize it has to move from what saying what we need to what we are doing, right? You can't say, boy, I need some water. Are you going to get up to go get it? You know what I mean? Me need some bread. Are you going to go make it? You understand me? I say? So we need healing. Then we have to say, what are we doing on the other side to facilitate this? How are we actively engaging history, information, feelings, emotions to be able to get that healing? The healing not just sit on and lay down off on the beach and say, Medea, you're ready for the healing. It don't work like that. You have to show up and be ready and willing to say, listen, this is difficult to hear. And it make me feel aware. It's like people told me, Amuna, it's difficult to listen to the other side of get up, stand up. You know what I'm saying? It was difficult to hear the human part of this person, Bob Marley, and the human experiences of Rita Marley and the human experiences of Marcus Garvey, right? Because we want to put people up on a pedestal. That doesn't facilitate healing. And sometimes we put our parents or our families on pedestals. And that doesn't facilitate healings because we may say, I could never think of grandma like that. There's a video I did on here with a professor named Grandma Secrets is the name of the video, speaking about the same stuff. Our unwillingness and our inability to honestly look at our foreparents in a way that possibly may make us feel uncomfortable. Okay, so with that said, let me see if there are anything else. I think I'll leave it on that note. Definitely check out. Wait, I have one more. Jason says, her words are reminiscent of my own experience with my mom. And yes, I too have reached a place where I'm safe. I love that woman. And usually writing, I say exactly, go to Open Book Media and I have information all about writing because I think and have learned that writing is a great tool and vehicle towards healing, right? So even though this person, they're about to tell us that they have issues with their mom, if we write and we speak, we can see that when you say that woman, that creates kind of a distance between you and the person. I love that woman. But it was never reciprocated. But I now know that wasn't from her. It was inherited. So again, we try to make sense of our experience. We try to figure out, why am I thus? And sometimes I notice that it's easier over the years to look at someone else's experience. Wow. And then say, I identify with it. Okay, I could see Judy Mowatt and now I can see myself, right? People, that's because our eyes first look outward. To look at our own experience, it takes closing our eyes. It takes you see how I was just quiet right there? Introspection, right? It takes us to be quiet and still and to go inside. Assessing those feelings, thoughts, emotions, stories, history, right? And so for a lot of people, it's very, very uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Jason goes on to say, yes, there is a void, but when you know better, you must do better. And I agree. When you know better, you must do better. So hopefully this video has helped with the conversation. How do we go from we need healing to how do I get healing, right? And affirmations are great, depending on what you're affirming, right? But you have to engage. Just like learning, you engage the text, you have to engage the emotions. You have to look at them and assess them and process them. And it's not going to be easy, but it is possible. And this can help the next generation because you can update, just like your phone can be updated, you can update a new version of yourself that the generation before, your children never knew, but now the grandchildren get to know. Sometimes I said to my parents, wait, me never know this person. My children know an upgraded version of the person I used to know. So in the same way, we don't want somebody to say, we're the same person that we were at 5 because we have grown. It's the same way we need to give grace to our parents and grandparents that, yeah, they weren't the same person they were at 20, at 60. And we have to give grace in that way. That doesn't mean that their behavior didn't affect you, positive or negative. It just means they're also a human a soul on this human journey having a very human experience. So with that said, thank you for tuning in. Check out the channel, and check out the Judy Mowatt interview on the channel. I'm trying to remember. I never knew. So once again, thank you so much for this, and we'll talk again. Wait, I'm back. So check out Island Twist, and shout out to everybody who have gone over and purchased Island Twist and joined the conversation. And Island Twist is dedicated to the culture. I was about to go before I said that, because it is looking at all of these coming of age injuries that oftentimes happen in the culture because of custom and tradition, right? And so it's not only just an entertainment novel, it's something that allows us to engage the text and these experiences to help facilitate our healing. So once again, check out Island Twist over on Amazon. Island Twist follows Jackie Brown, a young girl who finds herself head over heels for the new island boy at school in fresh outer yard, and Jackie has the fever. But as she navigates the ups and downs of her new crush, things quickly spiral out of control when her not so secret admirer becomes determined to sabotage her relationship. So check out the new novel, Island Twist, over on Amazon today. Now back to the story.